My name is Lynne Serpe. I'm the Green Party candidate for City Council in District 22, which includes Astoria, East Elmhurst, Woodside, and a little bit of Jackson Heights.
Great. And so what are you doing out here on the street? I see this ballot box, there's fruits.
Right, exactly.
These strange ballot cards.
Well, we're trying to draw attention to something called instant runoff voting. It's a different election system where voters can rank the candidates in their order of preference. They can say their first choice, 1, second choice, 2, third choice, 3. It's the idea of avoiding a runoff. One election, not two. Because in a single ballot, you can tell them who you want in a runoff. So you save time and money and $20 million.
This is interesting. So, for example, I know in this mayoral election we have about, I think, 9 candidates, but only really 7 are getting attention right now.
Exactly. So here in New York City, we have a runoff provision. If no candidate gets at least 40%, then the top 2 face each other in a runoff. Usually 2 weeks, this year 3 weeks later. And that runoff usually gets nasty, contentious, negative, and turnout drops. And it costs $20 million. So instant runoff voting would allow you to, in your first election, say who your first, your second, your third choice, and so on. If there's 9 candidates, you could rank all 9. If you only like 2, you can rank 2.
Well, this seems very revolutionary. I mean, is there anybody else around the world that does this?
Actually, we used to do this in New York City in the 30s and 40s. So ranked choice voting, or preferential voting, because you're ranking in order of preference, was used here in New York City, 60, 70, 80 years ago, but it's used throughout cities throughout the country and around the world. So San Francisco uses it, Minneapolis uses it, Burlington, Vermont uses it. It's a really straightforward system.
So it's interesting. So was it used for like all elections in New York City in the 30s and 40s?
It was used for city council. We had something called proportional representation, and so people would rank the candidates, and then that idea was vote results were proportional, 10% of the vote, 10% of the seats. So what we saw, actually, Adam Clayton Powell was the first African American elected to the New York City Council using a form of instant runoff voting called the single transferable vote.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that.
No, they don't. I mean, we also had communists elected, and then what happened is we had black communists elected, and Tammany Hall, Democratic Party, kind of freaked out, and they ran a Red Scare campaign. So they did that here in New York City, but they also did it in places like Cleveland. There were about 24 cities which were using a ranked choice voting ballot at the time.
Very interesting. And so for this to work, I mean, right now it seems like you guys are counting these ballots by hand. Isn't there like some computer system that could do this?
Right, so the city has moved to new ballots, a paper ballot with an optical scan. So it's actually perfect for instant runoff voting because you can fill in your paper ballot, you can fill in your ovals or write in your numbers, and then you run it through the scanner, and then yes, the computer can tally the votes. So you have your paper trail, and you use technology to get your instant election results.
Now, see, every time I ask you a question, I get more and more interested here. Because the city, I know, this did these optical, scanning machines, but I heard that they're, for this primaries and a possible runoff, they're using the old lever machines.
And that's what it is the city, because it's a new system for the city, the optical scan. They're worried that they won't be able to handle a runoff election, which is usually 2 weeks later. Because what they have to do is not just count the votes on election night, and they need to audit them. And they're worried they won't have enough time to do that and hold an election 2 weeks later. So they said, oh, let's bring back the old lever machines. We know we can audit those, because there really is no audit on the old lever machines. There's no paper ballot, there's nothing to audit. It's a little ticker. You flip a lever, and you're hoping that the tumblers inside actually work. So sure, it's easy to audit the system, because there's no voter verifiable paper trail. So that's what the city said, is we want to have time to do the runoff 3 weeks rather than 2, and let's use the lever machines because we know how they work. Really, the Board of Election needs to learn how to do their jobs. I mean, mostly the Board of Election are party patronage positions. People are appointed who don't have a history in fair elections and election reform. They don't understand all the barriers to participation, and they ruin our elections for the city.
It's very interesting. Final question. Yes. So about this ballot here.
Sure.
So for some reason, I don't know if I have a small American mind, but it seems like it gives a person like 4 times the vote on one ballot.
So the idea is that you're still getting one choice. So if you rank, let's say, orange as your first choice, and then we count all the first choice votes, and if orange has 50%, then that's it, you're done, it's great. If orange doesn't get in 50%, but it's not in the bottom, then your vote will stay with orange. because it's like a round by round. Do you know American Idol? You know, you start off with like what, 12 singers, and then they go down to 11, to 10, to 9, to 8. What they're effectively doing is a round by round runoff, and that's what you do here as well. So your ballot stays with your candidate as long as they're in the position. The only time your vote gets transferred is when your ballot gets knocked out. So you still only ever have one vote per round.
Right. Well, thank you so much for explaining this to me. It sounds very democratic. I can't believe this.
There are a lot of advantages. Saving time and money is a biggie. I mean, we have so many lines at the polls these days that it's almost like a modern day poll tax. Unless you can afford to take off 4 hours from work or afford to pay a babysitter overtime, it's hard for some people to make it to the polls once, much less twice. So this way, you go once, you save time, you save money, and you save the city and city taxpayers $20 million.
Great. Thank you so much.